Welcome, I'm Donald Standeford, and welcome to teaching writing through using Trump's Art and War in Trump's World. I'm going to get right into it today, just with an explanation that what I do is I usually write some stuff here and then I go through it with you, and then I put it into a software program, which I will show you right now, called the Novel Factory. And here we're able to do our synopsis and characters and locations, and then the scenes, of course, where I'm putting them in at the end of each session. So let's get right into it. In the Art of War, which is one of Donald Trump's favorite books, which is noticeable since he wrote The Art of the Deal, there is a rule that you fall by in warfare: open ground and narrow passes. Open ground is in the rush and pounce, the exiting forward moving campaign, looking toward the election, the inauguration. Those hate you smile at you and shake your hand. You reach your destination, the White House, and everyone smiles, shakes your hand, and begins to plot against you immediately. Then for 4 years, traveling through strange political grounds, the landscape threatens at times and is easier at other times. Filled with rocks and weeds and cliffs one time, then the next it's open, easy ground. Which would you want to fight upon? If you fight upon easy ground, then your opponent has it easy too. You fight upon hard ground, your opponent has it hard. Which would you rather take your opponent on? Narrow passes when shadows darken the path and you don't know who is above, in front, or behind you. What if I mistake or underestimate them or overestimate the enemy? What if I say the wrong thing? Those rabid politicians have been lying and cheating their way through tough ground their whole life. I know little of their world. They know little of mine, thinks Trump. But 4 years of that, and I shall be a shadow. I shall know the enemy better than the best of them know me. Most of all, I will know myself, how I need to attack those SOBs. I will know the board, the terrain, even better, as I have studied it, than they do who have walked on the ground of politics for half a century, some of them. Then it will be they who must look out for me. Chances of life and death, which is another Earth strategy. You have to take the chances of life and death in when you make your strategy to go at war with the enemy. Just like in the previous section, you had your open ground and narrow passes, which meant you had to take into consideration which kind of a ground it was. Are you going to be walking through a narrow pass where you're going to have to look up or down, which is what I based my little spiel on. So the chances of life and death. Look at Lincoln, Kennedy, and Reagan. It seems the more good you try to do, the better chance you will die in the middle of your presidency. All it takes is a psychopath with a gun. I could live a long, good life, thinks Trump. Happy and peaceful if I stay out of this mess. Yet, that would be the coward's reaction. I was made for this fight, thinks Trump. There are many good Americans out there that were not made to fight or trained to defeat or outthink these people. I could die falling in a bathtub, for God's sakes. I could die in my sleep. Would I have ever repaid America for the great things that she has done for me? Next, we're going into laying plans. Continued. The commander stands for virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. This is a point from the Art of War. When you're laying your plans down, your commander must be virtuous, must have wisdom, otherwise the people following him are not going to want to follow too closely, and they will have a lack of respect for him if he's a fool. He must be sincere. It is hard for you to get people to follow you into battle if you are not sincere. They don't ever know what you're thinking, or they don't trust you. Benevolence, courage, strictness. All these disciplines are, well, they're pretty much made into anybody in the military. and especially the officers. Unless you get a bad one, and then you're in trouble if you're following them around. Trump commands the military, not because he was voted in by the people. When he put the military in charge, he readied himself to back away and let them handle the rest of the war. But optics is everything. Though Trump should have backed out by all means and reasoning, Lai and the military generals find themselves in a situation much different, but perhaps much more suitable in its uniqueness. More suitable for what? The plan was to have things officially put the military in charge, declare martial law, but out of things, yet, okay, scratch all that. Start laying plans again. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, strictness. Trump commands the military, not because he was voted in by the people. When he put the military in charge, he readied himself to back away and then let them handle the rest of the war. But optics is everything. Though Trump should have backed out by all plans and reasoning, he and the military generals found themselves in quite a situation much different, but perhaps much more suitable in its uniqueness. More suitable for what? The plan was to have things officially taken care of, to put the military in charge, to have Trump declare martial law and leave the presidency and leave the military in charge. Yet since God had this whole thing planned out, a unique set of circumstances came about. How? How did this happen? Donald J. Trump had changed the whole course of events. It wasn't supposed to happen this way, not in their wildest dreams. But that's how great things happen, isn't it? George Washington faced circumstances far differently than any other general that had gone before him. The Continental Army, George Washington was a man of God. Despite what this woke generation thought, he was a great man and fit for war. Those of them who even knew about him, because the education system's so bad in America today. George Washington almost joined the British Navy as a young man. He was bound for the British Navy when his mother, whose opinion meant very much to him, asked him not to join. So he didn't. He went to America instead, the new land. Whether his mother's request or his own, I do not know about that. George Washington was destined to lead the newly formed Continental Army in its feeble and unlikely attempt to gain for this new land of his freedom from the tyranny of Mother England. Did Washington command arrive in the same form and fashion of that as of earlier generals, lords, kings? He was a general like no other. He was a soldier created for a certain place and time. God creates his own deliverers with molds only he has the ability and imagination to make. The art of design and the power of creation belong to him. God's molds are like no others. He shares the glory of deliverance with no other man or woman. Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, King David, who was a man after God's own heart, Samuel, anointer of kings, Isaiah, John the Baptist, Peter, the rough-hewn fisherman who often spoke up too late, the Apostle Paul, converted by Jesus to show to the world how Christ within man has more than enough patience to suffer for him. John the Revelator, standing upon an island on the Mediterranean Sea, gazing at the horizon, watching the future, even as the future happened. He knew all that took place in the future, but he understood little of the technology. He did, however, know that what was going on in the hearts and souls of those demons, victims, self-proclaimed gods, and the lost. He was John, the Revelator, the Watcher. What could we say was the advent of our modern age? We think of the continental United States as a far-off spot in history. 1776, not so far, really. They thought of themselves as the modern age. After all, What they were creating was the new United States. That was what God said through his prophet Kim Clement. I created you unique, United States. You are like no other. As God watched America grow, he knew each soldier in the Continental Army as he knows each of us, each of you. God knew each farmer, daughter, mother, and son. He watched them settle into a new land, a land to be called the United States. And he blessed them. He had placed them there. He gave each settling American a goal, a stake, a hope for the future. God made each new American unique. He planted each of them on free soil for a purpose. Abe Lincoln, a backwoods, too-tall, gawky lawyer, or you might say geeky, a true example of the new breed, the new American with nothing but dreams and hopes for him, before him. Traveling the circuit as a lawyer, the strapping Abe Lincoln, Abe married Mary Todd, a high society woman who saw potential in the backwoods wrestler who kept a crowd entertained with stories at every party. Story after story, holding his audience in rapt attention. Once Abe Lincoln was hired by messenger to help out in a case in a nearby city. This fancy law firm hired him sight unseen. They needed a local to lead them through the ins and outs of this area of the country, its laws, its ways, all of its quirks. When these fancy lawyers from the big city firm actually saw Honest Abe, they shrank back in horror at this gawky, oversized, gangly, backwoods hick. That's all that they saw, not the great man who resided in the body. They gave him a few dollars and sent him off. They sent him packing because he looked odd to them. They knew little of life in America, evidently. They knew even less of what makes a great woman or a great man. As did these snobs, these selfish liberals, when a new kind of person arose into the presidency of 2016, a man like King David, a man after God's own heart. That is how the prophet Kim Clement would describe him. Trump will become a trumpet, says the Lord. That utterance from God came in 2007 at Redding, California. And from then on, many more words about Donald J. Trump would foretell the futures that are happening in front of our eyes today. Mark Taylor, Hank Kunneman, Kent Christmas, and many other prophets of God. Trump will be a trumpet in the next election. He is my David, a man after my own heart. He will come from New York. They will say that he is hot-headed. Well, he may be hot-headed, but he will put a wall of protection around this nation. He will be a two-term president. He will not be a religious man. He will defeat the giant of socialism. He will bring to nothing Israel's enemies. They will ask, how can we defeat this giant of socialism? He will look at the giant and lift up one solitary stone, and they will laugh at him. But those who stood against him will be astounded at what happens next. People, it is really happening. You are being lied to by the mainstream media. The swing states are folding. People are mad. We will not keep a traitor in the White House that cheats to get in and was helped by foreign forces. I'm going to take that and I am going to cut it out, and I am going to open up my Novel Factory program. This is a program that you can get less than $100, $60 to $100. I don't remember how much I paid for mine. And I'm going to add a new scene. I think that I shall call this scene, well, let me see, what was it about? Trump will be a trumpet and lift a stone. All right, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to put it in as a first draft, which I usually do, but you can put it in as character, locations, all that stuff. And it always comes up here, so then I have to take it, and I'm going to, I can put this one a little later than I usually do. Keep going, keep going. Maybe chapter 3. Let's put it in chapter 3. I guess it can always be changed later. And I'm going to save it before something happens. A lot of times this program will get kooky. Thank you, and you have a good day.